I am the mom of 2 toddler boys who are born 15 months apart. I'm 35 weeks pregnant with my 3rd baby and planning my first natural childbirth. I work full-time as a dental hygienist. My name is Leah, and I am a miraculous mama.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and we believe in empowering women through storytelling and education. And we have an awesome educational episode today all about sex therapy. So this might not be one that you want to listen to with the kiddos around. We dive into some sex stuff. So, but it's a great episode. I'm so excited. Vanessa Marin's coming on. She's a sex therapist and she is just so awesome. It's such a great conversation with her. And I also wanted to give you guys a heads up that this is going to be the last episode before the end of the year. So we are going to take a couple weeks off just to enjoy the holidays and not have to stress about podcasting and just be able to spend time with our families. So I'm really excited to reconvene with you guys after the beginning of the year. We have some really great episodes. I'm still recording this next week. I have a bunch of recordings so that I can start off the new year with a bang. And I'm really excited. I want you guys to reach out to me and let me know who you want to hear from, what you want to talk about, because we want to bring you what you guys want. So make sure that you reach out to me on Instagram or in the Facebook group. Also, if you guys are interested in doing an intro, we have different moms from our community doing the intros, telling us what makes you a miraculous mama. Reach out to me. I love recording those intros with you. It gives me a chance to get to know you a little bit more. I get on the phone with you, we chat for a little bit, record the intro, and it's just a lot of fun. So make sure you do that. And also make sure that you subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening so that you can stay up to date on all the episodes coming out. Also, don't forget to take advantage of all of our discount codes over the holidays if you're still Christmas shopping as well. I'm so excited, like I said, for the episode today. Vanessa is awesome. She's so easy to chat with. And I was so grateful that I was late to our interview because I had to call her in the car. I had dropped Jovi off at my in-laws so that I could record, but I was going to record there, but I left some equipment at home. So then I had to run back home. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be back on the call in 5 minutes. I left a cord at home and I ended up just recording at home. So, I'm grateful that she was like, oh, no problem. And so cool about it. I felt so bad. But then we just had a great conversation around sex. I mean, it's something that is a part of all of our lives and it's something that isn't talked about that much. And, you know, being in a new season of life for me, I know that that's a conversation that Vito and I have had to have around that as well. So it's really nice to be able to talk to Vanessa about, we talk about mismatched sex drives, libido, you know, what that postpartum, phase of your life, how to communicate with your partner, your sexual needs, and just even needs in general. Sometimes they're not sexual needs. Sometimes you need to ask for something else that will free you up to actually be able to be intimate with your partner. So she gives us tons of advice, and I'm really excited for you guys to listen. All right, everyone, we have Vanessa Marin with us today, and I'm so excited that she's here. We have never done an episode, after 3 years on sex. So I'm super excited to have her here. Most of the people who are listening are moms or wanting to become moms. So sex is kind of something you do to become one. So it's a part of all of our lives and it definitely changes with the seasons. And Vanessa is an expert. She helps people in this area and she's going to share with us today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to chat today.
Yeah, me too. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into sex therapy?
Yeah, so my name is Vanessa, and I am a licensed psychotherapist. I specialize in sex and relationships, and it's really my mission in this world to help people take their sex lives and relationships from ordinary to extraordinary. So I started off as a psychotherapist, and I still see people one-on-one, but primarily what I do now is create online courses. I know that sex is such a sensitive issue, and for a lot of people, it's really challenging to want to talk to a complete stranger about the most intimate details of your life. So I started creating online courses a while back about some of the most common topics that come up, like female orgasm, low libido, mismatched sex drives with your partner, how to have more fun in the bedroom. So that's really what we focus on now, is just creating those courses so people can have these resources just from the comfort and privacy of their own home. And I got into this field originally. It really traces back to my parents' attempt to have the talk with me. I had, like most people, it was an extremely uncomfortable conversation. I feel lucky that they even tried to have a conversation with me, because a lot of people don't. But I really remember in that moment noticing how embarrassed my parents were. And I was very curious about sex at the time that they brought up this conversation. I had questions that I wanted to ask them. And I just remember thinking, like, why is this so weird? Why can't we just talk about it like we talk about other stuff? So that, I had no clue at the time that sex therapy was a potential career option for me. I think I was about 12 years old, so I wasn't even really thinking about the rest of my life and my career at that point. But I just kept coming back to that moment, and it's really motivated me to pursue this entire line of work. And honestly, the vast majority of what I do still boils down to helping make these conversations feel less awkward and more normal and more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, because it's also, it's something that everybody thinks about. It's something that most people do at some point in their life. And it's a normal thing. Like, our bodies were created. We have sexual organs for a reason. Like, women we're the only ones who have a body part strictly for pleasure. And yet it's like this, like you said, uncomfortable or embarrassing thing to talk about, but it's not. We were created to have sex. And so it's a normal thing. And so I love, I love what you're doing. I feel like, and I feel like you have those friends that, like, you can talk about sex things with, and then you have your friends that you can't, that you're like, this isn't the conversation for this person, but somebody else I can be like, the other day, like, it kind of felt weird right here. Like, I don't, like that person that you can talk to about it. So I do feel like normalizing it, because it's a completely normal thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know, it's really interesting. We all have sex. We all have bodies. We all want to feel good. And yet we feel so embarrassed and ashamed talking about sex. And if there's a challenge in our sex life, which every person is going to experience at some point or another, we all feel so alone in that. I can't tell you how many messages I get from people saying, I feel like I must be the only person struggling with this. I feel so ashamed. I can't tell anybody about this. And it's just really interesting to notice, like, this is such a universal experience, and yet we all feel so alone in it. Mm-hmm. So that's another huge reason why I'm so passionate about doing this work, is just helping people recognize you are definitely not alone. I promise you, whatever challenge, concern, question you have about your sex life, you are absolutely not the only person going through that.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that one of the most powerful ways to improve your overall health and happiness is to get a good night's sleep? But if your daily routine has changed, it can be harder to fall and stay asleep. That's why I'm super excited to be partnering with Calm, the app designed to help you ease stress and get the best sleep of your life. And when you relieve anxiety and improve your sleep, you feel better in every part of your life. And Calm has a whole library of programs designed for healthy sleep. They have soundscapes, guided meditation, sleep stories narrated by famous people whose voices you're going to recognize. There's over 85 million people around the world that use Calm to take care of their minds and get better sleep. And if you go to calm.com/mamas, you'll get a limited time offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription, which includes hundreds of hours of programming. Get the Calm app and experience a transformation in the way that you sleep. For the listeners of the show, Calm is offering a special limited time offer promotion of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/mamas. That's 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library, and new content is added every single week. Get started today at calm.com/mamas. That's calm.com/mamas. Now back to the episode. speaking of being alone, so motherhood can be a very isolating thing for a lot of people. They, especially in the beginning of postpartum when you're staying home and with your baby, or if you're exclusively breastfeeding, sometimes you feel tied to that, or you can get touched out, or, just even on your maternity leave and figuring out, how to keep a human alive, and your body has gone through these waves of hormones. You can feel very alone in that moment. And in that season, although you do have this partner, but it can seem like this partner just wants things from you too, which is the thing that you hear a lot in the postpartum, is that I'm touched out. Somebody's needed, or like just moms, not even just necessarily the postpartum period, but being like, a kid has needed something from me every single day. And then my partner comes home and needs something from me too. Like, what about me? I'd love for you to kind of touch on that season of life.
Yeah, absolutely. These are some of the most common dynamics that come up with moms. And I think there's just so many challenges, that come up that are really important to talk about. There's so many different threads of this puzzle. But I think a huge one is really being able to identify, what is it that you want out of your sex life? What are ways that your sex life can be about you and not just about your partner? Because if you get into this dynamic of feeling like, yeah, it's just another thing my partner wants, just like it's another thing that someone wants from me, of course, that's going to build up a sense of resentment. It's going to make sex feel like something that you do for someone else, you give to someone else, rather than an experience that you get to have yourself and get things out of it as well. And so this can be really challenging for a lot of moms, because especially new moms can really struggle with libido. And it sort of feels like, I don't want anything from it. Like, I don't want anything to do with sex altogether. And so it can be challenging, but it's definitely very important for you to spend some time thinking about, what is it that I could get out of this experience? What is it that would feel good for me? And even if there are times where it's just, all that I want right now is my partner to just hold me for a little bit. Or maybe it's something like, I want 10 minutes of alone time, have my partner take over the kids, handle everything. So I just get to be alone and be with my own body. And then maybe I feel open to connecting with my partner, stuff like that. So it doesn't need to be that you're, wildly turned on and you have all these crazy fantasies that you want to do. Like, sometimes it's just those really simple things that can help us reconnect with our own bodies and feel interested in more. So that's definitely a huge piece of it. Another really huge piece is making sure that you and your partner really do feel like teammates. And this can be really challenging because being a mother is a very different experience from being a father. And, most people will say like, I want to have a teammate. I want to have somebody who feels like, we're partners in this. And yet you can't do everything divided exactly equally, or do the exact same tasks. And so it takes a lot of really active, ongoing communication and navigation and re-navigation with your partner to figure out, how can we make this feel as balanced as we can between the two of us, so that you're not building up that sense of resentment and feeling like, I am doing everything for everyone, and I am not adding sex to this list too.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you kind of have to be in a space, though, where you're aware of that. Like, you come to a place where I guess you have to learn to be aware of what you even want, which I feel like a lot of people probably don't know. Yeah, no, that's a great question. This is something that all women struggle with, not just mothers, is that we are really socialized to be caretakers and caregivers and to put others' needs before our own. We really get praised for when we sacrifice ourselves. And so a lot of women really struggle with understanding, well, what is it that I want? Because we're so used to tuning into other people, and we can be really, really good. I mean, you can probably predict what your partner wants and needs maybe better than your partner can sometimes. And so it takes a lot of work, again, for all women, for us to turn that attention inwards a little bit more and start to think, okay, well, what is it that I want? How can I give myself the same kindness and consideration that I give to other people? And, to get a little bit more practical with this, because I know this can feel like such a big question. One of the things that I see a lot of women struggle with is they feel like
the answer to the what do I want question, like it feels so massive. And it feels like you've got to like write out this massive list of, these are the 100 top things that I want in the order and the specific details of what I want and when I want it and who and, all this stuff. And it just feels really overwhelming. But one great thing that you can do is change the question around to like, what is some little thing that would feel good to me right now or today? Like really shrink that question down so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. That'll make it easier to it's almost like developing a muscle memory of considering your own wants and needs. If it feels smaller, less intimidating, you can do it more frequently than writing out this huge, massive list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess that brings me to another question. So once you kind of figure out what you want, something that I guess I've just observed over the last 30 some years of my life is, like once you figure that out, I feel like a lot of people then have a really hard time communicating that then to their partner. They feel, well, how can I ask him for this or her for this? Like, how can I ask for this thing? Even if it is a sexual thing, or even if it's, hey, you know what? When you come home, if I get 10 minutes to myself, like then, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's that communication. Like, why are people so scared, do you feel like, to communicate that?
Well, it's a scary thing. I mean, anytime that we put ourselves out there and ask for something that we want in a relationship, in a friendship, and, any part of our lives, we put ourselves in the position of being turned down. And nobody likes being turned down for anything. It always stings. So it is a very vulnerable thing to ask for something that you want, even if it is something small. So I think I think acknowledging that is really important. So rather than beating yourself up about it, like, well, why can't I just ask for what I want? Why am I so, cowardly or, whatever it is, instead of beating ourselves up about it, instead to acknowledge like, yeah, it's really hard to ask for what I want. And I can be patient and gentle with myself as I work on building this up. So it's kind of like resetting your expectations in certain senses. And then to give you something that's super practical around this, one thing that I really like to do with couples is to encourage them to do little experiments with each other. And I love using the word experiment because it implies this is just something that we're trying out and we're going to see how it goes. So we're not saying this is the perfect thing and it's going to solve all our relationship issues and we're brilliant that we came up with this. It's just, hey, let's try this out and see how it goes. And that very same attitude actually works really well with exploring your wants as well, because another trap that women get into is we feel like, oh, well, if it's something that I want and it's something that I ask for, I have to like it. It's like you feel like you're making some sort of commitment beforehand. And that puts a lot of pressure on you. Like, oh, I don't know if I would. So if you have, so basically what you do is have this conversation with your partner where you say, okay, I want to try a little experiment. I want to practice asking what I want. And I want you to practice asking for what you want too. So let's just see what this feels like. And if you want to share with your partner, like, hey, here are some of the challenges that I have around it, or here's why it feels complicated for me. Like that can be a really intimate conversation between the two of you. But the basic idea is you're telling your partner, I just want to experiment with this a little bit more. So let me try it out, see what it feels like. You can let me know what it feels like. And, so you're treating it like it's almost like a game the two of you are playing rather than making it feel really big and heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. So by now, everybody knows what a subscription box is, and you probably already have your favorite one for you or your kids. But did you know that there's a great place where you can shop thousands of subscriptions no matter your interests? Well, there is. Welcome to Cratejoy. It is the world's first and only subscription box marketplace. You can literally shop thousands of unique boxes and gifts for just about anything that you can imagine. And the best part is that you can choose the subscription length so that you're not locked into anything. I loved going to Cratejoy and picking out boxes for everyone on my list because they literally have everything on there. So it feels like you're getting a personal individualized present for that person. They have plant of the month box. They have craft cocktail boxes. They have mindfulness and meditation boxes. They even have things like escape room and mystery boxes for adventures at home, or boxes to boost each version of yourself with self-care and personal growth, monthly book clubs, do-it-yourself crafts, literally everything. I got stuck in a rabbit hole being like, oh my gosh, but I want this for myself. So, I may have picked out a few things for myself along with other people on my Christmas list, because Create Joy has it all. And there's still time to find the perfect gift for everyone on your list. You can shop thousands of subscription boxes all in one place, and it's not too late to shop Create Joy's holiday specials. And right now you can get 30% off your first box when you sign up at createjoy.com/mamas. That's right. Sign up today at createjoy.com/mamas and get 30% off your first box and shop Create Joy's holiday specials. Create Joy. Get joy delivered right to your door. So another thing I guess that you hear with a lot of new moms is the whole libido thing, just zero desire. And when is it like you're tired, you're whatever, all these different things, that contribute to that season of your life. But when does it become a time where maybe you should seek help? Like your hormone levels are really off and you need to see somebody to help you balance that. Cause I feel like a lot of people think it's just normal to not want to have sex for 2 years after you have a kid. And maybe that is, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's just so variable from woman to woman. And I think that a lot of women put pressure on themselves to be able to get back into the saddle as quickly as possible. Most doctors will say like, wait 6 weeks after birth in order to, before you start having sex again. And I think a lot of women get that time frame in their heads of, okay, once 6 weeks is up, I've got to be roaring to go, And it's kind of similar to the pressure that we put on women to like snap back, with their bodies after birth. It's the same sort of thing. Like you should just snap back into wanting to have this wild, sexy, hot, crazy sex life with your partner. And so I think, the number one thing is just to recognize it's so individual. There are some women who will feel desire even shorter than that 6-week timeline. And there are some women who will take much, much longer than that to feel desire. So it's challenging to give a specific piece of advice that will work for every woman. But I think in general, it comes down to feeling into what's coming up for you in those moments. So some women will say, I don't feel desire for sex right now, and I feel totally okay with that. And that's fine. I'm not going to pressure a woman to, feel like she has to work on her sex drive if she's feeling content with where she is. There are other women who will say, I feel like there's a part of me that's missing. I feel disconnected from myself. I'm, wondering where this all went. So, if it's something that is bothering you, then it's definitely something that you should consult with, a therapist, your doctor, maybe a sex therapist. And then, so I think, your relationship with your own libido is the most important thing. I also think that it's important to consider your partner's libido as well, because you are in a relationship, and part of a relationship is that we consider each other's needs. It doesn't mean we meet 100% of each other's needs. This is not at all going to happen in any relationship, but we consider them. So if you're, 2 years into it and you're like, I could never have sex again and I'd be totally happy. And your partner is saying, I am really missing having sex. I don't know about that whole going the rest of our life thing. Then I think that it would be great for the two of you as a couple to do some couples counseling, maybe see a sex therapist together and talk about how do we navigate that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something that I wrote down when you were asking is when you're saying when people are like, oh, if their sex drive doesn't bother them, you don't push it. But what if their sex drive bothers their partner? If one person has no sex drive and the other person does, or one person has a really high sex drive and the other person's like, I can't that much. I know that you talk about mismatched sex drive. So I'd love for you to kind of touch on that.
Yeah. So I love when I'm talking about mismatched sex drives, really normalizing that every couple has mismatched sex drives. I think a lot of people get freaked out about it and they start worrying like, oh, are we really compatible? Maybe we're not a good fit for each other. Reality is every couple has mismatched sex drives. You are never going to find a partner who wants sex the exact same time that you do, every single time, the exact same kind of sex that you want. Like, it's just not going to happen. So we've got to normalize that it's perfectly, common and normal to have a different sex drive from your partner. That being said, sex drive is a really interesting and it's very complex because there's so many different factors that can affect it. A lot of people go straight to hormones and just think like, oh, well, I just need to, get some hormones or, get some testing done. And hormones do, they are a piece of the puzzle, but they're a much, much smaller piece than most people realize. A much bigger piece that tends to come up is relationship dynamics, how the two of you are doing outside of the bedroom. So this is a great way that you can actually work on navigating those mismatches in your sex drive is by taking a look at, well, what's going on outside the bedroom? So if you and your partner are in a place of, high conflict, you're fighting all the time, you don't feel like your partner's carrying their fair share of the load, you're not communicating very well, like, why would you want to have sex with them? It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of us put pressure on ourselves feeling like we're supposed to just have this crazy sky high sex drive regardless of what's going on in our lives. So, taking a look at the relationship dynamics, and that might sound a little scary or intimidating, but the reality is, the stronger your relationship is, the better pretty much every aspect of your life is going to be. So sometimes sex drive issues are an invitation to take a look at what's going on in the rest of our lives and really, be able to improve that. So that's a big one to look at. And then another huge one is the level of pleasure that you get from sex. This sounds so straightforward and simple, but most people do not realize that there's such a strong connection between the level of pleasure that you feel during sex and your desire for it. So a lot of women have sex that's not particularly pleasurable, that's more focused on male pleasure than on female pleasure. That's in, heterosexual couples specifically. That is sometimes even painful, especially after having birth. That might be boring or routine or predictable. And so if the sex that you're having is not particularly enjoyable, it literally makes zero sense for you to crave it. But so many people just don't make that connection. So that's another great opportunity that you're being presented with is being able to have, it might be really tough to recognize like, oof, yeah, we're not really having very great sex, but that's a great opportunity for the two of you to work on having sex that's going to feel more pleasurable, more exciting, more connecting, more intimate, and then your sex drive will kind of fall in line from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a lot of things are coming up as you're saying this for sure from some of the questions that listeners asked and then also personal experience with the whole communicating thing. So my daughter's 3 months. We just had our first kid and I've learned very quickly and thankfully my husband and I can tell him things and I'm not like, I can tell him if I'm feeling resentful. I'm like, I'm mad at you right now and I know it makes no sense, but you get to sleep right now and I don't. So it pisses me off, but one thing that we've realized too is just, I get easily overwhelmed. And when I'm feeling like, okay, I got to put her down and then I have to clean up dinner and then I got to do this. And then we haven't had sex in a few days. So I probably have to do that. And then, just kind of overwhelmed. But then, now it's like, okay, why don't you give her a bath and I'll clean up dinner or you do this and I'll do that so that by the time she's in bed, there's nothing else left to do that we can just spend time together. Like whether it's, just the other day, I was like, oh, I should put the laundry away. And he's like, just cuddle with me. Like, we don't cuddle that often, let's just cuddle and watch an episode of The Office and go to bed, and it was so nice because I feel like I totally get that, like when you're getting overwhelmed, because it does feel overwhelming pretty easy, especially when you've had a rough day with your kid and, and then feeling like, I probably have to have sex with my partner too, but it is like when you are able to communicate and when he sees that like I'm feeling overwhelmed and he just takes something off my plate for me, then I'm like, oh, hey, it's sex o'clock.
Yeah, I think, being able to have those conversations, it sounds so simple, but it's so important, and they end up having such a big impact. Sometimes it's even just being heard. Your partner doesn't need to have a magical solution to it. And actually that's the most time we just want to be heard. We don't even want our partner to solve the problem for us. So if we can just hear each other and validate each other's experiences, that goes such a long way in making us feel connected. Mm-hmm. You also brought up another really interesting point too, which is creating more time for touch and even non-sexual touch in relationships. And this is a great way to kind of avoid the touched out dynamic that can come up. Is, a lot of couples, when they're not having a ton of sex, or if sex is starting to feel like a source of tension between the two of them, over time, the only touch that they'll have is during sex. And so touch starts to become very loaded. Like if your partner just gives you a little pat on the butt while you're walking by, you kind of flinch like, oh no, I don't want him to think that, we're going that way. Or if your partner comes in for a kiss, you're like, oh no, I don't want her to kiss me like that. Like, I don't want her to think that we're going to have sex. And so it just creates this connection that, any sort of touch has to lead to sex. And that can create a lot of pressure and expectation and resentment. And so if you can focus on having moments of touch where it's just enjoying the touch for touch's sake, rather than this is our, 30 seconds of foreplay right into sex, that can go a really, really long way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We're going to pause this interview so I can talk to you about an amazing tool that can help you realize what may be stopping you from reaching your goals or what's interfering with your happiness, and that is BetterHelp. They will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can connect in a safe and private online environment. And I know after talking with Hunter a couple weeks ago on the podcast, I realized I might need to go back to therapy. I've shared that I've used BetterHelp before, and I am diving back into those sessions. I think being a new mom has just definitely brought up some stuff for me. You see so much in your kids. I know Jovi's just still so tiny, but kids are little mirrors, and they bring out things that maybe triggers or stuff that underlying issues that you didn't know were there. And it's such a great time to be able to get the help that you need and to break that stigma around mental health. I feel like everybody should go to therapy at some point in their life. And BetterHelp makes it so easy to be able to connect in a way that's comfortable for you, whether it's text or email or phone calls or video chats. And everything you share is confidential. They're available worldwide, and they are growing at a crazy rate because they are such an amazing tool. They're convenient, professional, affordable, and in fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. I want you to start living a happier life today. And as a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by using betterhelp.com/mamas. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health and join me. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mamas. Now back to the episode. So you had said something earlier about pleasure, which makes total sense. Like if I'm not getting pleasure out of this act, why would I do it? Why am I making time for it? And so some people in the group were asking too about just kind of the stigma around vibrators or bringing other things in to help with pleasure, and how somehow it seems to be almost more of a male thing when maybe they don't feel good enough because you need something else, or how to ask your partner to incorporate that, or just kind of maybe you do need some other help, just kind of breaking down the stigma around that and being able to have that conversation with your partner.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a science geek out on you for a second with this one.
Sweet.
So we're talking about, specific dynamics that come up between men and women here. So the reality is that the way that that straight people have sex, it's very focused on male pleasure. So most of us, we think sex and we think of intercourse, penis going into a vagina. Like that's what we think of as sex. And the reality is that intercourse is not the most enjoyable or most pleasurable activity for the vast majority of women. And so what I want to science geek out on is the nerve endings. So, when you're having intercourse, you're having stimulation of your vagina, which does not actually have a ton of nerve endings, because think of how painful childbirth already is, how much more painful it would be if you had way more nerve endings down there. So earlier, right at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned, female bodies, we're the only ones who have a part of our body that is only designed for pleasure. It serves no other purpose. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the clitoris. And you're totally right. No other purpose other than pleasure. The clitoris has 8,000 to 9,000 nerve endings in this, very small little form. The entire penis has like maybe 2,000 to 3,000 nerve endings.
Wow.
So we're talking about, double to triple the amount of nerve endings. Now, if we talk about the vagina, I have looked before many times, and I cannot even find a proper scientific tally of how many nerve endings there are in the vagina. So I like to make this sort of funny comparison and say that, having intercourse from a purely nerve ending standpoint, for a woman, it would be like the equivalent of tugging a guy's testicles.
Right.
So it's like, okay, there's some nerve endings there. Sure, there are some people that enjoy that. That could feel kind of good. But for the vast majority of men, that's not going to be enough stimulation to lead to orgasm. And it's not going to be enough to feel pleasurable and exciting and want to do that for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
And even that comparison, that analogy is a little generous. Like really, it could be even more like just rubbing his elbow. Like,
Right.
What guy's going to want to be like, yeah, babe, just rub my elbow 2 times a week, every week.
Right.
So, it sounds so ridiculous when we talk about it like that, but that's the reality that so many women, the ways that we pressure ourselves when it comes to intercourse is we feel like we should enjoy this. It should be wildly pleasurable. It should be orgasmic. We should desire it. And the reality is that that's just not how our bodies work. Like it can feel really playful or intimate to have intercourse, but from a pure, pleasure standpoint, most women, the vast majority of women are not going to be able to orgasm from it. So that's why we've got to come back around to our friend, the clitoris, to give it the respect that it deserves, to recognize this is so freaking cool that we have this part of our body that has no other purpose other than making it feel good. So how can we make it feel good when we're having sex? So that could be a lot of different things. That could be expanding your definition of sex so it's not just intercourse. That could also be finding ways to create more clitoral stimulation during intercourse so that your partner, gets the stimulation that he likes, you get the stimulation that you like. So I think it's just really important for couples to have conversations about this. So you could even show your partner this podcast and be like, I learned something today that I had no idea about. Like you have to listen to this little part of it. And then so it's just being able to give them that information. Because I bet a lot of your listeners right now are listening to this and thinking like, holy crap, I had no idea about that.
I didn't know all the nerve endings. I'm like, whoa.
So it's, there are also a lot of men out there who have no freaking idea about this. So a lot of times it just comes down to education and realizing it's not that any of us are doing anything wrong. It's not that we're terrible, selfish partners. It's just that none of us are given the information that we need to have, great, fulfilling, exciting sex lives. So once we have that information, can we take away the shame and the stigma and say yeah, you know what? I do want some more stimulation of the part of my body that has 2 to 3 times the amount of nerve endings that yours does. The part of my body that is only designed for me to feel pleasure. Yeah, why wouldn't I want more of that?
Yeah. Man, yeah. I didn't know that either. That's so crazy. So another thing that I guess people... or actually, before I get into that, something that came up when you were saying it was kind of getting rid of, the stigma and shame around maybe using something else. But when it comes to sex, it's something that holds a lot of shame for a lot of people. And I've talked very openly about that. For me, it did. I kind of grew up believing that as a woman, basically I cause people to stumble and cause them to sin just by having boobs and a butt, you know, like, so for me, I did hold a lot of shame around sex, and it was, you know, hard for me to be able to, I guess, see it as something that was good and that I am to enjoy it. And my, you know, and with my husband, we were able to like have a lot of those conversations and talk through things. And I was able to like be open with him in a different way, which was awesome. But there is so much shame, and it seems to be, again, something that maybe women hold on to a little more than men, probably 'cause the society that we live in. But I know like a lot of the listeners kind of also grew up in a religious upbringing like I did, or even just in a society that says that you're a woman and your body is a sexual object and men's aren't, so they can do whatever they want with theirs. So a lot of women hold shame, which also might be contributing to them feeling like, I can't tell my partner this, or I'm embarrassed to say this, or even what I want. So I'd love for you to just kind of touch on shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will not surprise you to know that I work with a lot of people who grew up religious. Unfortunately, you know, I have yet to come across a religion that treats sex, you know, as not a source of shame. So yeah, it's really unfortunate that so many people grow up, you know, being taught to feel deeply, deeply ashamed of something that is such a natural, normal part of our existence. So one of the challenges that a lot of people come across is this feeling of, you know, well, I was raised this way. I don't want to believe those things as an adult, but having a hard time really letting go of those. And I also work with a lot of people who feel like they followed all of the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you know, maybe someone who says, well, I waited until I got married to have sex. You know, I followed the rules, and yet they're still feeling that sense of shame and guilt. And in these kinds of cases, I think it's just really important to validate, like, if you were taught your entire childhood, or maybe even your entire life, you know, taught to believe that sex was something shameful, sinful, something you had to avoid, it was just a source of, you know, evil even, like, it's very difficult to just fully and completely let go of those beliefs. I mean, anything that we get taught, like really, you know, ingrained in us from a young age, like those messages get in, and they get in deep. And so even if you have followed all the rules and been a good girl, like, it's not like that a switch is just able to flip and we go from, you know, fearing sex and worrying about it to like, yes, sex is great and wonderful and perfect, and I never have a care about it ever again. So, you know, some of that is just the normalization aspect of it. And then, you know, from there, I think it's really important to go through a process of identifying what is it that you want to believe about sex. So again, it's not going to be that doing this is going to flip a magic switch and you're going to have this perfect relationship with sex. But I think most people, we never identify our own values and beliefs about sex. So the values and beliefs that we were taught, they keep a really strong hook in us. But if you can go through this process of saying like, yeah, okay, if I had to go back and like design my own religion, you know, how would my religion treat sex? What would I want to learn? What would I want to think about it? And kind of identifying your own values and beliefs. And a lot of times what you may find is there may be aspects of your religion that you did agree with. Like maybe, you know, your religion taught you that you should value your body and treat it like a temple and only share it with people that you were in love with. And yeah, maybe as an adult, you're like, yeah, those are the guidelines that I want to follow. So I'm not saying that, you know, all religion is evil and you just have to cast everything out. It's just, it's getting a little more nuanced and saying, okay, yeah, this piece of what I was taught, that was good. I want to hold on to it. This piece of it, I'd tweak it and I would want to believe this. So just being able, and we actually have a YouTube video. My husband and I have a YouTube channel together. And so if you just go onto YouTube and search for Vanessa Marin, religion and sex, it'll come up and we kind of walk you through how to go through this process. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. It can be really powerful just going through that little exercise.
Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to just kind of touch on like just shame in, I guess, in society, just because of, just kind of growing up in like, so my husband's family is very European. And we were just talking about how like in Italy, there's just nude beaches and it's not a big deal, and here it's like you're showing too much cleavage. So it's, our society in America, or even like talking about like, when is it inappropriate to start being naked in front of your kids? I remember I used to do a lot of couch surfing when I traveled, and I stayed with this lady in Sicily who had like a 4 and a 5-year-old son. She was a single mom, and I surfed on her couch while I was there. And the last night I was there, I was like, I want to take you out to dinner to thank you. So she went to like change, and she came in my room just completely naked and was like, should I wear this dress or this dress? In her cute Italian accent. And I was like, you go, like, good for you. Just being so confident, like, cause it's a body, like, it's, we all have bodies. So, and it's just in their culture, it's like, whatever. And here it's just so, I feel like that contributes so much to the sexual shame as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. My husband and I lived in Berlin, Germany for a few years. And I remember whenever I would, introduce myself to a German person, if we'd start talking about my job, every single person would say like, why is there even a need for sex therapy? Like what are the problems? Like they could not understand how we Americans could have such complex relationships with sex that there would need to be an entire field dedicated to helping us overcome that. So it was just, really interesting to notice those cross-cultural differences. So I think, shame, a lot of shame can come from religion, but a lot of shame can come from, just general societal beliefs that we were all raised to have. And even sometimes it's not even that you were directly told something, but you just sort of picked it up along the way, and that can lead to shame. So there's just so much to unpack there, and it really can be a lot of different beliefs that come up, for different people. So very similarly to what I was describing with religion, it can be helpful to start with identifying, what are the things that you do feel shame about? Because for a lot of us, shame is just something that lives really deep inside of us, and we don't ever bring it out into the light of day to examine it. And so that can feel really scary to do, but that's one of the best antidotes to shame is actually like bringing it out and saying, these are the things that I feel ashamed about. This can be a great conversation to have with your partner where you share, what do you feel shame around and where do you think that shame came from? It can be incredibly intimate to have that conversation and help you guys understand each other better. And you can go through a similar sort of process here too, where you think, these are the beliefs that I have about sex, but this is what I want to believe about sex. These are the values that I want to have. So again, it just comes down to identifying like what feels important to you. And then one other piece that can be really helpful is, this is something that I do in my own life. When I'm feeling shame or embarrassment or, anything like that, sometimes I'll take a moment to think about like, where is this coming from? And the vast majority of the time, it's like, oh, well, I never saw that happen in the movies. So, that's why I feel ashamed that it's happening in my real life. And so I take a moment to kind of say to myself, like, okay, that's not mine. Like, that's something that I was taught. And that's kind of up. I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure if I can swear. You can bleep me out. But that's kind of messed up. And like, I was taught to believe that, and just being able to sort of take that step back and realize like, that's not me. I was taught to believe that. That's not me. This comes up a lot for me personally, like around my body. I'll catch myself thinking horrifically mean thoughts about my body. And I have a pretty good relationship with my body, and I still catch myself all the time. And so I'll take that step back in that moment and think like, that really sucks that I was taught to be so mean to my body. It really sucks that I spent my entire life being told that my body needed to look this one specific way in order for it to be worthy or lovable or attractive. And so just having that moment to recognize like, this is not how I actually feel. It's not mine. That can be really incredibly powerful if you can stop yourself in that moment.
Yeah. That brings me to another thing that a couple people were asking on. And it was about, being worried that your partner's not going to feel the same about your body after having a baby, and your partner's, you kind of have to relearn as your body's changing. Do you have any advice to the mamas who are like, I had a baby and my body doesn't feel the same to me, and I don't think it feels the same to my partner, and I don't want him to see me naked now?
Yeah. So this is a prime example of being able to step back and recognize, like, this is not how I actually feel about my body. This is what I was taught to believe about my body. And like going back to all these, all this pressure on moms to snap back, as quickly as possible, that you're supposed to look like, you're supposed to erase all evidence of this miraculous thing that your body just did. It's really horrifying. And it's so sad that we put these kinds of pressures on women. So a lot of it is just like, for me, I find myself, I get really fired up about this kind of stuff. Like, that's just BS. Like, that's crazy. That can really help. Sometimes if it's hard to think about yourself, thinking about like, if you have a daughter or a niece or some special, like, younger girl in your life, like, what's the kind of relationship that I would want her to have with her body when she gets older and, when she becomes a woman? Sometimes that can really help. Then I'll speak to the partner side of it. This is really fascinating timing because on my Instagram account, I was just posting a bunch of questions about attraction to your partner. Somebody had sent me a DM asking about it. And so I put up all these polls. And so we've been talking about attraction for a couple of weeks now, about like what causes you to lose attraction for your partner? What does attraction mean to you? What are the specific things that make you attracted to your partner? All this stuff. And so we were specifically talking for a while about physical attraction, like what your partner's body looks like. And I was going through, like, I swear I got more comments and DMs than any other topic that I'd ever brought up. And so I'm going through all of these, and I realized at a certain point, I was like, the ones about bodies, 98% of them are from women. There were, I think, like maybe one, or there were like 4 maybe that were from men talking about, losing attraction to their partner's bodies. There were hundreds and hundreds from women talking about losing attraction to their male partner's bodies. So I thought that was so fascinating because we have these, these stereotypes that like men are the more visual creatures and they're more superficial and they want their women to be these perfect hourglass figures or rail thin or, whatever it is that's in style at that particular time. But literally there were, no comments from men talking about that. So I think that it's just so interesting to recognize that we are often our own worst enemies when it comes to our bodies, and the ways that we see our bodies are so different from the ways that our partner sees our bodies. Mm-hmm. And so just, being able to recognize like the things that I see in myself, my partner just does not see, and my partner loves my body. And especially if we're talking about male partners, like I don't want to be too stereotypical, but I hear from so many men who are just like, boobs. I just love boobs. As long as I'm seeing some boobs, like, it's fine. I love everything.
Yeah.
So I think, just recognizing that your partner definitely sees your body way more positively than you do. And maybe you can even ask your partner, like, when you look at my body, what do you see? What are your favorite parts of my body? What turns you on about my body? So getting some reassurance from them in that way can help too.
Yeah, that's a good exercise. I've been struggling a lot with the term bounce back lately because I was like, I got in this Googling hole of like, when the baby weight's supposed to be off, and they say it's by this certain week mark and all these different things. And I'm like, this is so ridiculous. And even just like the advertisements that are, help you bounce back after baby. And I'm like, I was thinking about it the other day and I'm like, I can't bounce back after having a baby because I have completely transformed who I am. Like I'm a whole new woman now. Like I just, I'm never going to be the same. And although I do value health in my life and I enjoy exercising, I'm in a weird season right now where it's really hard for both of those things. I used to enjoy cooking, which I still do, but there's nights where I'm like, let's pick something up. Let's order something because it's just not going to happen. And, and it's a different season of life. And I just, I know that a new season will come too. And so it's just kind of embracing, this is where we're at right now. And finding those joys in it, I feel like has really helped me, and being able to communicate with my partner because he knows that I've I struggled with body dysmorphia for a really long time before and did a lot of work to be where I am now. So when he sees, the other day, I was like, I want to weigh myself. He's like, babe, do not weigh yourself. He's like, there's no reason to. Like, why would you do that? He'll try to like balance me, and which is nice that I can have that conversation with him. But the whole like bounce back thing, I struggle with those words because I feel like it sends that wrong message that that's what you're supposed to do. And it's like, your whole life is different.
Yeah, exactly. And your body has done this incredible, miraculous thing, that the idea of just erasing all evidence of that, it's horrifying to me. There was this really great post by The Bird's Papaya. I was on her podcast a while back and I just love her. She posted this great image on Instagram where on one side it was her body, pregnant. And then on the other side, it was her body after a previous pregnancy. And they're both, I think she's wearing a bikini in both of them. And her body looks, quite similar in both photos. And then on the photo of her being pregnant, she posted all these people's comments of them really praising her body. Like, oh, the female body is so miraculous. Like, look what it does and how it adapts and grows to, support this miracle inside of you. And then on the other photo, which was just her, normal, non-pregnant body, there's all these horrible, nasty comments like, her stomach is disgusting. She needs to get plastic surgery. Like, ew, how dare she even post a photo like that? And it was just, shocking to look at how cruel we can be to women's bodies and that we can, give them so much praise during pregnancy. But then it's like the second that you're not pregnant, like you've lost all of that compassion and kindness and generosity. So there's a lot of gross stuff that happens around women's bodies and pregnancy and even just weight in particular. It's funny hearing you say that because I just a couple of days ago, my husband told me, he's like, God, babe, your body looks, I don't think you've ever looked this good. Like, you look really good right now. I'm just like, oh, thank you. I felt really good. And the very next day I weighed myself and I was actually the heaviest that I've been in many years, actually. And it was just so interesting to, I felt that moment of panic, like looking at that number. And I had to take a second to talk to myself in that moment of like, my value is not determined by this number on this scale. Mm-hmm. And to remind myself that literally just, 12 hours ago, your husband was getting very turned on looking at this naked body. Mm-hmm. So there's just so much for us to unravel. And it just really sucks that we're, that our bodies are treated this way by society. So I think we've all got to work on being kinder to our own bodies and trying to promote an environment where we're just much kinder to each other's bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we wrap this up, I would love to ask the question I'm sure a lot of people ask, and it's like I don't know, you might be annoyed by it because it's probably like what people always ask, but just kind of that, how do you keep the fire going in a relationship? How do you keep the sexual chemistry going in a relationship when you've been, together for 5, 10, 20 years and then you've had kids and, how do you keep the fire aflame?
That is a very common question. And I can give you a one-word answer, which is effort. And I think, most people, we are led to believe that our sex lives should just be perfect. If we're with the right partner, if it's the right chemistry, the right fit, like we should just be wildly, spontaneously attracted to them all the time. And sex should always be amazing and perfect and wonderful. And the reality, unfortunately, is that is just not how sex works in any relationship, and especially not a long-term one. So I think it's really coming to terms with the fact that if you want to have a great sex life, it's going to require a great amount of effort. And for me, it's just so important to normalize that. And not only that, but to help people get excited about putting effort into their sex lives. Like not feeling like it's like, oh, I got to go work on my sex life again. But to realize like, this is something that I value. It's important to me to feel connected to my partner. It's important to me to feel pleasure in my own body, to be playful with my partner, and to have this special thing that only the two of us get to share with each other. So just kind of wrapping your head around that, like realizing there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your relationship. It's what we are all going through. And then, from there, it's like finding the effort that feels fun and enjoyable to you. So is it that like, I want to put effort into making sure that we have romantic date nights and we get to have that like quality uninterrupted time with each other? Or I want to put effort into us trying new things in the bedroom and constantly kind of researching what are different things that we could do together. Is it, I want to put effort into exploring my own body and pleasure. And maybe I want to learn how to orgasm on my own or, learn a little bit more about what I like. So there are so many different avenues that each of us can go down. But yeah, it kind of first starts with that idea of like, can we get excited about this being a project that we get to work on with our partner for the rest of our lives?
Yeah. When you said one word, I thought you were going to say therapy.
That might be better for my business if I said that.
Well, I'm a huge fan of therapy. I feel like at least everyone should go to therapy at least once in their life. So I was like, yes, therapy. Everyone needs to go.
Therapy will help too. Maybe that's the way that you like to put effort in. Yeah, I think a lot of people get really scared of therapy, and especially sex therapy. It's like, oh my God, like things have to be really bad if we're going to go to sex therapy.
Or they probably think that you are wanting this really crazy sex life, right? If you're going to sex therapy.
Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions that come up about sex therapy. So I like to just work my tail off to help people recognize like therapy can be a lot of fun. It can be an incredibly bonding, intimate, exciting, playful experience. So I try to keep people laughing, try to keep it feeling a little bit lighthearted and recognize like it actually can be a huge amount of fun.
Mm-hmm. And so for everyone listening, where can they find and follow you? Where can they find your courses at? And like you said, I know you have a YouTube channel with your husband. I was watching some of those videos. You're funny. It's like entertaining to watch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we just started that this year and we've been having a lot of fun with it, trying to figure out how to do this, but we're having a good time. Yeah. So, if your audience wants to connect with me, I would love to connect with them. The two best places to find me are just on our website. It's vmtherapy.com, VM, like my initials, and then therapy.com. And we have tons of free guides available on our website from everything from like, best way to have your first orgasm, secret libido killers, the 2 different sex drive types, like all kinds of stuff. So you can find all that there. And we also have a weekly email list where we send out free emails every Friday. We cover a different topic every month and give you like exercises and advice and tips and all that kind of stuff. So that's really just great to get on that. We don't send you anything sleazy or, sell your email address or anything like that. Sometimes people get a little nervous, like, I don't know what I'm signing up for. So yeah, it's all totally above the board. And then on social, my favorite platform is Instagram, and my handle is Vanessa Marin Therapy. And yeah, over there we do like stories every day, kind of answer reader questions. We do polls. So it's just, a really fun place to connect there too.
Awesome. I will have a link to that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on. And just, I feel like you shared a lot of valuable information with us today. So I just want to thank you for that. And I hope that everyone listening takes advantage of the free resources. I mean, the YouTube channels, the guides. I mean, you can just learn so much from there. And then I feel like from there, you can also see, hey, I may need something a little bit deeper, maybe some therapy. So definitely check all of that out. So thank you again so much, Vanessa, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. I really appreciate it.
I seriously love talking with her. I would love to have her back on because she is just such a joy. Definitely take advantage of that free information, guys. It's so awesome when experts give that free information for people because that's what they're passionate about. They want to help people learn and to be the best versions of themselves. And that's what Vanessa is doing. So make sure you check out the resources that she has for you. Check out her Instagram. She has a lot of great information on there, in her highlight reels or just on her regular feed, and connect with her there. Like I said, this is the last episode before the end of the year. After the new year, we're doing an episode on, we're going to have a little motivational episode to kick off the new year. And then we have a lot of great people coming on. And again, I want to hear from you what you guys want. So let me know who you want to hear, what topics. If you guys know an expert in a certain field, let me know. There's a lot of topics that I have that I want to do, but finding the right person to talk about them can be really hard. So it's sometimes hard to get, the right expert on, or somebody who can give us the expertise advice on certain fields. So make sure that you reach out to me. Let me know what you want to hear from who, and we will definitely work to get that to happen. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. I love you so much. I am so grateful for this last year with you, learning and growing with you, and having you be a part of my community. And I just pray that this next year just brings you blessings, and that you guys are able to enjoy the holidays. Like I said in previous podcasts, I know that they probably look a little different this year, but I hope you're able to find some joy this December. All right. Love you guys.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.